matter and energy were also created at a point that cosmologists call singularity. In this light, John Boswell, the author of Stephen Hawking's universe, said, "The biggest misunderstanding about the Big Bang is that it began as a lump of matter somewhere in the void of space. It was not just matter that was created during the Big Bang, it was space and time that were created. So in the sense that time has a beginning, space also has a beginning." So from a naturalistic perspective, the Big Bang would then imply that the universe was created out of nothing. However, there is a key, intuitive, undeniable philosophical principle that out of nothing, nothing comes. This is why P.J. Swart, in his publication about time, explains, if there is anything that we can find as inconceivable, is that something could arise from nothing. So let's essentially summarize the first argument. 1, whatever begins to exist has a cause. 2, the universe began to exist. And 3, which we conclude and makes it a sound and valid argument, that the universe has a cause. But all we know from this is that there's a cause for the universe. We can't say it's Jesus, or Allah, or God, or anything that we ascribe to this cause. Something we've disagreed about for millennia, since 6000 BC Sumeria. We've attributed around 3,800 different types of descriptions to this cause if we study the history of religion. But I would argue, if we stick to the rational method of thinking and use something called conceptual analysis, big word I know, all it means is let's think very hard about this cause, okay? Let's think very hard. Okay, good. So if we think very hard about this cause, and since this cause created time and space, therefore it must be one. Because if we follow the philosophical principle of Occam's razor, which says do not multiply entities beyond necessity, because the most simplest explanation is the best explanation, therefore this cause must be one. Also, this cause must be uncaused, because of the absurdity of an infinite regress of events, similarly with causes. And I'll give you an example. If I wanted to shoot, I don't know, Gaddafi? Right? I wanted to shoot Gaddafi, for instance. Not that I'm inciting anyone to do that, of course. It's a hypothetical scenario. Never met him before. Never had tea with him either. Thank God, someone may say. So say I wanted to shoot Gaddafi, and in order for me to shoot Gaddafi, I have to ask permission for the guy behind me. Can I shoot Gaddafi? And he says, you know what? I have to ask permission too. If that goes on forever, am I ever going to shoot Gaddafi? No. This is why, by rational necessity, this cause must be uncaused. Also, this cause must be immaterial and transcendent. Because if it created time and space, it must therefore transcend time and space. In other words, this cause exists non-spatially and atemporally. So the logical conclusion is that this cause must be immaterial because all material things exist within time and space. Finally, and most significantly, this cause must have a will, which means it can have a relationship with personal agents in the universe. Because if this cause is uncaused, therefore eternal, and it brought into existence a finite effect, such as the universe, therefore it must have chosen the universe to come into existence. And choice indicates a will, and a will indicates that it can have a personal relationship with personal agents in the universe. So therefore, upon our rational analysis, the logic we've used in conceptual analysis, we can conclude what Islam concluded 1400 years ago in the book called the Quran. In the 112th chapter, it says, say, He is God, the one and only, God the eternal, absolute. He begets not, nor was he begotten, and there is nothing like unto him. So in essence, God is one, unique, eternal, immaterial, etc., etc. But before I get to the second argument, I want us to have a nuanced discussion. So I want to provide some counter arguments with regards to the first argument. So we have a bit of more of a nuanced, detailed discussion. One of the arguments to my first argument is about quantum vacuum. Because some physicists, they claim that there are subatomic events in the quantum vacuum that do not correspond with causality. They behave very unpredictably, so they conclude that things that begin to exist don't always have a cause. So it undermines my first argument. However, let me respond to this. Firstly, the claim is misleading because the vacuum is not nothing, rather it's a sea of fluctuating energy that obeys the laws of the universe. Secondly, there are many physicists that are adopting a deterministic approach to quantum theory, such as the David Bohm interpretation. They're moving away from the Copenhagen interpretation about this kind of spontaneous events in the quantum field. So it doesn't really undermine our first argument. Also, the other argument, which I think is slightly childish, but a lot of philosophers still use this argument, is, well, who created God? Who created the cause that caused the cause for the universe? Well, let's follow that thinking. Well, who created that cause that apparently created the cause that caused the cause of the universe? Well, then who created that cause that caused that cause that caused that cause that caused that cause that caused that cause that created the cause of the universe? And if we go on forever, are we ever going to have the universe? No. So the question itself denies our very existence. So let's go to the second argument, the nature of the Quran. Now, brothers, sisters, and friends, when we probe and investigate the nature of the Quran, which is the book of the Muslims, we will conclude that it is an act of impossibility. And this concept, which is an act of impossibility, is in line with the coherent definition of what is a miracle. What it really means is that when we exhaust all possibilities in the natural world, all logical possibilities in the natural world, and still can't find an explanation, then it's a sign, it's an indication to the divine or to the supernatural. And I will discuss this in the following way. I would use numerical, historical, and natural phenomena or scientific statements in the Quran, not to the natural world, but to the supernatural reality. Let's start with numerical. Now, first and foremost, the Quran, which is the book of the Muslims, was revealed around 1400 years ago. Many of its 6,000 plus verses were revealed instantaneously to address problems and concerns of people at that time. This process lasted 23 years. In light of this, how do we explain the numerical consonants, the numerical coherence of the Quran, and how do we explain this in the context that there was no computers at the time, there was no calculators, and there was an ability that was absent with regards to storing the Quran in a mathematical type of way. For instance, the Quran mentions world 115 times and mentions the hereafter 115 times. Paradise and hell are mentioned and repeated 77 times each. The words wine, al-khamr, and intoxication are repeated the same amount of times, 6. The words man and women are employed equally 23 times. Also, if we go to the largest chapter of the Quran, which is the second chapter, Surah Baqarah, chapter the cow, it has 286 verses. They were revealed over a 9-year period and then put together in a coherent way. And when we go into the middle of that chapter, which is the 143rd verse, we find the word middle. So, since the Quran was primarily an oral phenomenon and its verses were revealed instantaneously to address unprecedented events, what does this say about the author? This indicates for me it's an act of impossibility, as there is no sufficient naturalistic explanation for the occurrence of such numerical consistency. The least we can say, brothers, sisters, and friends, it is that it's extremely unlikely that an illiterate man could have produced such work in absence of calculators and computers. Let's go to the historical aspects. Now, the Quran mentions 2 titles for the leader of the Egyptians, and these titles are used in 2 specific eras. For instance, at the era of Joseph, of Yusuf alayhi salam, the title is Al-Malik, the king. And for the era of Moses, the title of the leader of the Egyptian is called Pharaoh, Fir'aun in Arabic. Now, why does the Quran make this minute differentiation specifically to these different periods? Well, we know that these 2 different titles were used at 2 different periods. And we only know this because we had access to the